Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. So this is going to be my sort of experience, I guess you could say, with post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD. This is the kind of video that is quite hard to make, and I've purposefully chosen a day, time of week, you know, general mood where I'm feeling good about it, because I don't think that making this video when I'm feeling particularly troubled or upset or emotional or anything like that is going to be useful, not only for you but also for myself, because I don't want to put myself in a more vulnerable position when I'm already feeling vulnerable. But I feel like I have a responsibility to talk about things like this because they aren't spoken about enough. I don't think any of us are, you know, unaware of the stigma attached to anything to do with mental health. And I don't want to portray a certain version of myself that isn't necessarily like true. And what I mean by that is not that anything that you've seen in recent months is fake. It's more so that I have kept a part of myself hidden, and that was not to lead anyone astray. It was more to the point where I was like not ready, and I wasn't really even sure myself what was a matter. So if you have followed me for any length of time, you will probably know that I was born with a syndrome called Stickler syndrome. As a part of that, I had Ptsd sequence, and that included a cleft palate. Sorry for all the background noise, by the way, but it's really warm and I've got my windows open. Now, if you look at me today, you don't probably see any issues with me, not like really bad medical ones anyway. Maybe I'm a bit annoying, who knows, but the only real difference about me is probably that I've got hearing aids. But other than that, my syndrome hasn't affected me massively at all, and I have lived, I would say, 28 years of my life without any sort of worry. But I always knew that when it came to having children, there would be a 50% chance that I would pass this on to any baby that I carry. And I had Bill, and Bill was a surprise. I was 23 when I found out I was pregnant, so obviously at that age it didn't really occur to me to even think that my baby would be poorly. And luckily enough for us, Bill was born completely healthy, absolutely fine, 13 days late, 8 pounds 6 ounces, no problems whatsoever. Fast forward a few years and I split up from Bill's dad. I've been a single mum for a bit, I've met Mark, and then we decided to try for a baby of our own. And it was a really great pregnancy. We conceived very quickly, and once again I think I was naive, because after having a healthy baby the first time around, I'm willing to put myself out there and think that I was in, you know, say that I thought I was untouchable. I thought everything would be fine again. And we had scans, a few extra growth scans, but we live in a small area, I would say, and the hospitals around here aren't as specialised as perhaps the bigger ones that we've been to, like Alderhay or Manchester. So nothing was picked up, and of course on the 21st of April 2016 Daisy was born, and within a couple of hours it was evident that she wasn't okay, and she was born with Stickler syndrome with Ptsd sequence and a cleft palate, and she sort of deteriorated pretty quickly and was struggling to breathe, and it was very distressing at the time. To cut a very long story short, she spent 6 weeks and 1 day in Nicu, and we brought her home, and that day was like one of the best days of my life, to finally bring my baby home. But what I hadn't really focused on at the time was that it was actually very difficult, because she came home with a breathing tube in one nostril and a feeding tube in the other, and it was the only way that she could breathe properly or get proper nutrition. And I became her carer. I was on maternity leave, so that was fine, but I had to give suction, change her breathing tube, make sure it didn't obstruct so she stopped breathing. She slept every night with a monitor attached to her foot, and sometimes it would go off because her oxygen levels would drop, or she would kick it off by accident, and I would wake up every single time thinking that my baby couldn't breathe. It was horrific, absolutely horrific. And slowly but surely, around 12 weeks old, she was able to take some time out from having her breathing tube, and she did really well. And that came out. She had a sleep study, all box ticked, and then we went on to trying to get rid of the feeding tube, and that came out when she was 5 months old. And from 5 months old onwards, obviously things were much easier, but we still worried about her all the time. I only recently got rid of her Angel Care mattress with the sensor because I was constantly convinced that she might still die in her sleep because she would obstruct and wouldn't breathe. Things did get better and things got easier, but then she had her cleft palate repair in February of this year, and that didn't go too well. It was a success in itself as an operation goes, but she obstructed in hospital, and we ended up spending a week in hospital as opposed to what we were told was a maximum of 2 nights in worst case scenario. And she couldn't breathe again, and that was very hard. And it was at that point that I noticed that I wasn't coping very well, and I was having nightmares, and I was very anxious, I was very stressed, I wasn't dealing with things very well. And that's all well and good, because when your baby's poorly, of course it's going to be difficult, but it stuck with me. And I would have good periods, like obviously going away to Disney World was amazing because I was completely able to leave all of that behind, and that was one of the first times where I noticed that the comparison of there and being back in our normal environment, there was a big difference, and not just the holiday blues kind of difference. And I say this this next bit in a very sensitive way, because obviously what happened has no massive impact on me compared to the people it actually happened to in their families. But the biggest issue for me was that I noticed that when there were terror attacks in the UK, Manchester and London, I was really affected by them, to the point where Mark had to take me aside and say, babe, I'm sorry, but it's not normal. I was struggling to leave the house, my mood visibly dropped. I would ring or message Mark every hour or so to check that he was still okay. I would have nightmares about him being killed on a train, or Bill's school being attacked, like horrific things. And I realised that whenever I felt threatened, or I felt that my loved ones were threatened, I would just completely lose it, and I would really struggle. And there were a lot of tears, there was a lot of like refusal to go out and be in a normal environment. I couldn't get past it. I became a little bit, I would say, paranoid even, and quite anxious. And you know, what I really want to get across is, like, look at me, I'm just your average mum. There is nothing to be afraid of when I talk about this sort of thing. Like, I am just as normal as anyone else, if normal even exists. But I was affected by something, and I struggled to talk about it with anybody, even Mark, because I was afraid of what people might say if I told them the way that I felt. I never thought that it was postnatal depression, because I never had any dark periods where I wanted to particularly run away or hurt my children or hurt myself, and I've got a very strong bond with both of my children. There's never had a wavering point at all. I never resented Daisy for anything. If anything, I felt guilt, because all of the things that have been tough for her are down to me and my genetics. And it got really bad. The breaking point for me was when my parents and my grandparents went away on holiday, and I had less people to talk to, I guess, and I was struggling still a lot at that time. And I decided, with Mark's encouragement, to ring my GP and make an appointment. So I did it, and I remember sitting on my sofa, and I ended up sat on the sofa, and I'd slid to the floor by the end of the conversation, and my hand was shaking while I was holding the phone because I was so scared. and I was scared that the receptionist might be a bit like, oh god, another one of you like time wasters or something. And she explained to me that unfortunately with these kind of appointments there is a waiting period, because they have to put like, you know, poorly children or like the flu or certain like medical emergencies first, and there was a wait. So I had to wait about 4 weeks for my appointment, but I had an appointment, so I clung to that appointment with everything I had. And ironically enough, as those 4 weeks progressed, I started to come out of the way I've been feeling, and I was feeling better again. And it has been very cyclical. You have great highs, and then you sometimes have lows, and then you have like, you know, normal periods in between where it's like, this is life, isn't it? Life is sometimes good, life is sometimes bad. But this appointment came around and I almost cancelled it, because I was convinced that the doctor was going to turn around and say that I was a time waster. Not only because my problems weren't big enough, but also because I was feeling a little bit better at that moment in time. But I forced myself to go because I recognised that there were patterns there, and I recognised that there were issues. And I went, and I literally had no idea what this doctor was going to say to me, this GP. And she was brilliant. I told her everything. I felt my voice catch a few times, and I felt myself well up, and it was difficult because Daisy was there and my appointment was actually 40 minutes late. So I've been waiting in the waiting room for 40 minutes with a 14-month-old trying to keep her happy and not annoy everyone else. So by the time we got into the appointment, it was very, very difficult. So if you are in the position to ask someone to have your children while you go, I would definitely recommend that. But yeah, I told her, I poured my heart out, and I was very proud because I actually managed not to cry, which I thought I would. And she nodded with everything that I said, nodded, understood, and it was like, you know, when you just feel like a wave of relief because somebody understands you, and it's not just a friend or family member trying to say that it's okay to make you feel better, because you do start to not trust things because you don't know if the real world is going to accept you for that reason. And she basically said that she sees this a lot. It's common with people that have lost loved ones, so bereavement. It's common with people who have been through a very traumatic event. You know, you see this a lot with people that work in the armed forces, special forces, for obvious reasons. And that settled with me funny, because I didn't think that I deserved to be on their level because they're so brave, and what am I? I didn't feel very brave at all. But I listened, and she basically said that it was a firefighting technique. So in the midst of trauma, when things are really bad, you fight that fire and you keep going and you don't stop, and you use every bit of energy that you've got to stop that fire. And when it finally ends, you go to carry on with your own life. And I'm trying to repeat her word for word, by the way, and she was like, but why can't I live? Everything's fine now, everything's supposed to be good, and I'm supposed to be happy and move on, and why can't I do it? And she said it's really common because you just burn out and you lose part of yourself because you're just exhausted from it, and you know, these traumas will revisit you. And I felt like she was just telling me exactly how I've been feeling, and I felt so like, yes, you understand me, you do. She gave me you know, techniques to cope. I've got a little card, I brought it upstairs with me, and now I can't remember where I put it, and I can't really show you anyway because it's got a like local number on it, and I don't really want to put that out on the internet. But she wrote on this card like some of the techniques to try, like mindfulness, and websites to look at. So what I will do is leave those in the comments down below if any of you feel like you would benefit. And I left feeling like she had taken the burden off my shoulders and was helping me carry it. And then I got the courage to tell more and more people, and eventually like I posted it publicly, which was a huge thing to do, because in this kind of world where you are, you know, you're a YouTuber or a blogger or whatever, people call you influencers, you feel this massive pressure to be this influential person who's like going to inspire people or be fun and bubbly and happy to watch. And I struggle with that because I don't want to be a person that people like look up to, as in I'm on a different level. I want to be the kind of person that's like, I'm just like you. Yeah, but it's been hard because I have kept it from you. I have felt like I've nothing to say, so you might have noticed periods where I've gone quite quiet and then I've come back with a load of stuff to kind of antidote that. But I'm at the point now where I had a darker time at the start of this week because Daisy started nursery, and it was the first time that I'd left Daisy with a stranger since I left her with doctors and nurses at hospital, when I had to leave her every day at Nicu and go home and be with Bill and sleep, and I couldn't stay with her. So that upset me a lot, and a lot of people over on Instagram in particular were so supportive and so kind to me. And this is going to be a really long video, and I don't expect everyone to have got to this point. I don't expect this to be for everyone, and that's fine. But I'm putting this out here because I feel like if there is one person, and if you're this one person watching this and you've been through anything, whether it is PTSD like me, maybe it's anxiety, maybe it's depression, maybe you're just feeling really down and helpless, I want you to watch this and go, okay, I'm gonna get some help, like Charlotte got some help. And she's just like me, so I can get some help, and that's why I've made it. I want you all to know as well that I'm not really badly struggling. I am not unhappy. I am not a danger to myself or others or anything like that. I am just someone that's been through a tough time who's trying to get out of it. And you won't hear me talking about this all the time because I don't want to share it all the time. And the biggest thing that came from it was that my mum actually took me to one side once I told her and said that her and my dad had been speaking about it, and she was exactly the same after having to deal with me, except back then there was even less support available. So just grab that support if you need it. And yeah, I've told you. Hopefully it makes sense, and I'm sorry it's such a long video. But thank you for watching, thank you for being so supportive, thank you for understanding, thank you if you even don't understand for trying to, and thanks for not judging me and making this a hell of a lot easier, because you know, you making it easier for me shows me that you're going to make it easier for someone else in your life one day when they come to you and they ask you for help, and that's so important. So you rock, I rock, we all rock. And thank you so much for watching, and I will see you very soon, hopefully with something a little bit more upbeat. Bye.